All right, well, I've got 12 o'clock on my clock, so you know our motto, we start on time and try to end early. This one seems to be going right to the 45-minute mark, so depending on the questions that we have, I think we should be right on time. Anyways, happy lunchtime, everyone. My name is Chris Wells. I'm the EVP of Marketing and Optimization and whatever else they ask me to do at DS Graphics Universal Wild. There's my contact information. You don't have to copy it down. I know you're probably all starting to, but there's a few handouts I'm going to go through, and all my information is in there. So just some ground rules for those of you, if this is your first webinar. I know some of you have been on these before. You each have a control panel. There's a little orange arrow. You can expand that or contract that depending on kind of how it's fitting on your screen. And there's a few icons. There's a hand icon that allows you to raise your hand. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm not going to see it. I leave time at the end for questions and answers, but it's too hard kind of going back and forth trying to find the hand. So you're all on mute, so if you keep raising your hand, I'll probably see it and I can unmute you if you have something that you're just dying to tell us. But for the most part, there's a little chat window. If you click in that, you can ask your questions, and then at the end of the webinar with a few minutes left, I'll go to the questions. I'll be sure to answer all that I can, and then the ones that I can't, I'll certainly get back to you on. There's also 3 handouts with this webinar. One is a cheat sheet on informed delivery, which is one of the omni-channel strategies we're going to be talking about. The second one is a Gartner study that I'm going to be referencing. And the third one is just an overall kind of summary of a lot of the bullet points in this presentation. Along with your homework, there's homework in this webinar, and my contact information, is also in there. So please download all those handouts, and I'll give you a few minutes at the end as well if you want to wait until the end to download them. Also, it says that there's a survey at the end of the webinar, so that's how you get your Grubhub gift card or gift code. It says it's 1 question, but I lied. I made it 3 questions, but they are very easy. It's just 3 multiple choice questions where you just kind of click a radio button. So it just gives us some insight in terms of what everybody's plans are for going back to work. It's important for us as marketers, and I'll share those results with you as well, because I'm sure a lot of you market to some of the people that are on the call or on the webinar. So with that being said, thanks for joining us today. This is all about omni-channel marketing, and my promise to you is that we're going to go through some definitions of omni-channel, how it differentiates from multi-channel. I'm going to give you 5 really simple, straightforward strategies. They're not super complex. We're not going to show you in this webinar how to build a complete omni-channel campaign, but I'm going to show you 5 things that are not only easy to do that match the omni-channel model, but are also very inexpensive to do, and in some cases, no additional cost to do. So with that, all of you regulars know that everything we do is related to response optimization, so I have to go through it every time. Some of you have seen this in a number of webinars, and if you're lucky enough to have us do our quarterly open book reports with you, I go over it then too. It's that spaced repetition. We want to keep pushing on it. So basically, the whole idea behind response optimization, and it really clearly aligns with omni-channel marketing, is that in any marketing communications that we do, whether it's print direct mail, whether it's email, whether it's social media, we're always trying to balance 2 components. One being the efficiency, which is measured by cost per unit, and the other being the effectiveness, which is measured by the response per unit. And our challenge as marketers is to make those 2 play nicely in this, what we call the optimal zone. The challenge is that in order to be efficient, typically what we need to do is amortize whatever sunk cost we have into the campaign over as many contacts and touch points as possible. So take direct mail for an example, or sales and marketing print collateral. There's a tremendous amount of sunk costs, such that if you're only producing 1, your cost per unit is sky high. So the goal is to produce as many as you can to get that cost per unit as low as possible. And in order to do that, you have to do all these great things marketers like to do, like make the piece more generic, make the piece appeal to as wide a range of socioeconomic audience as possible, make the piece be as generic as possible as it relates to geographic locations and specific needs for that geography. make it have the longest shelf life possible. So obviously all these things that we're doing that allow us to produce more and extend the shelf life of the piece and extend the audience we can send it to have a direct negative impact on the effectiveness of the piece. So the flip side is effectiveness, right? The response per unit. And if we want to get super high responses, personalized handwritten notes and real personalized email mentioning whoever you're sending the email to's family and how are they doing and everything else, those things will get a tremendously huge response per unit, but the cost to produce those and the lack of scalability makes it impossible to do so. So the idea behind response optimization is how do we use technology, process streamlining, process automation, standardization to reduce the initial fixed costs of whatever marketing campaign we're trying to do and lower the cost per unit and also flatten the cost per unit such that in an ideal world, we can produce an individually targeted piece at the same cost per unit as the 10,000th or 10 millionth piece in a more general campaign. We know that's impossible, but we're constantly striving to say, how can we reduce the cost per unit while increasing the response per unit using technology, automation, and process improvement? And omni-channel marketing is a very good way to do that because it involves technology, a lot of technology. Any Star Wars fans out there? The Mandalorian, can't wait for it to come back. One of their mottos is, "This is the way." So this is the way. What is the difference between multi-channel and omni-channel? I don't think the internet knows, but we go from more practical experience here. I'll actually start with multi-channel as a differentiating factor. So most of us, if not all of us, are doing multi-channel marketing. What that means is that we have a number of different ways to reach out to prospects and clients to get them to engage with us for our product or service. And that's email, direct mail, social media, phone, whatever, trade shows, whatever it happens to be. The thing with multi-channel marketing is normally the way businesses run multi-channel marketing is each channel has its own set of goals. So we're looking for this kind of response on our impressions or our followers on social media. We're looking for this kind of open rate and click-through rate on our emails. We're looking for this type of response rate on our direct mail. All of these individual channels have goals, and they're usually managed and done independent of each other. Even though we have an overall corporate brand and strategy, it may not be super clear to the user as we go through these different channels and get hit by these different channels that it's the same brand, right? Sometimes the content's a little different, the style's a little different, whatever it happens to be. But the key is with multi-channel, it's a little bit disconnected in the sense that each channel has its own strategy and goals. Omni-channel, outside of a consistent personalized brand experience where it doesn't matter if I'm looking at a social media post or an email or a direct mail, I know who it is, it's got that same feel. The biggest thing with omni-channel is that the goals are user-based and not channel-based. So we're looking at that individual record and saying, what do we want this person to do at this particular stage in their life cycle? And that's what we measure. We really don't care, other than for making adjustments, how individual channels are performing. What we're looking for is that overall goal that we want the user to experience and use any and every channel to allow them to achieve that goal. So again, multi-channel, the channel itself has strategy and goals. Omni-channel, your customer, prospect, the person that you're trying to influence is where is what the goal is set on. So the multi-channel way, kind of I call it the old way, it's going to be around for a while still, and it's very difficult to make everything omni-channel for sure, but this is the way it was done, right? You had a product or service, and you had all these different channels that would market this product or service: direct mail, email, social media, trade shows, collateral, and your customer may or may not go into any one of these different channels that you have and eventually become, or your prospect, and eventually become a customer. But the channels, again, separate and independent. Omni-channel kind of reverses and flips that on its end. So you have a customer, and that customer is going to go through different life cycle stages of their journey with you. From initially you don't even know them to maybe they're a long-time customer that's referring other people into your business. Each one of those life cycle stages, that customer is going to want to and need to interact with multiple channels that you support. That will all drive them to the appropriate product or service for that particular stage of their life cycle. So it's very different than multi-channel, where we just want all these different channels and make sure people can interact with each of them. We want to follow that customer through these different life cycles and offer all of the channels that we have within each of those stages to allow them to make the right decision to if they're a good customer for us. So one of the biggest challenges, I'm going to diverge a little bit off of the marketing speech, and marketers out there, I think you'll have some empathy to this. One of the biggest challenges we face as marketers is being able to align our service delivery organization with how we go to market. And what I mean by that is that if we have this great omni-channel approach and we're all about technology and service, you can interact with us and you can respond to our outgoing messages in any way that you want, but then they get into the organization, and as the service starts to take over, they realize that there's quite a bit of limitation in terms of how we can react. It will cause your omni-channel strategy to not be as successful as it needs to be. So this book, Woo, Wow, and Win, is a phenomenal book. There's tons of books on marketing, there's tons of books on sales, there's tons of books on leadership. There's very few books on customer service. You'll love this book if you're a marketer. It's worth the read. So I have the information in the handout for it, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what they say, because the book really has 5 points, and this is the principles of service design. First is the customer is always right, provided the customer is right for you. And they go as far as to say that if the customer is not right for you and you take the customer is always right attitude with them or approach with them, they can put you out of business. So it's important. What is the right customer for you? Second one I love, don't surprise and delight your customers, just delight them. We don't want them to be surprised when we accomplish what their goals, help them accomplish their goals. We just want to delight them. The third one, great service must not require heroic efforts. It kind of ties into the second one. A lot of companies are built on heroic efforts, and that's not a scalable process, and also ends up surprising customers. So we want to make it part of our fiber in terms of how we service organizations. The fourth point, which is a whole chapter, is directly related to what we're talking about today, and that is that service design must deliver a coherent experience across all channels and touch points. I'm going to go a little bit more into that in the next slide. And lastly, certainly continuous improvement, you're never done. So when we talk about that coherent experience and how it relates to omni-channel marketing, the authors break it down into 3 categories: harmony, integration, and end-to-end excellence. So let's talk about harmony. What they say is that whenever you're interacting with your organization, the engagement should feel like you. So you kind of know what that means. And you've probably had experiences with other people that you work with where you may be working with a salesperson and then you get into customer service and it's a different field, and get into accounting and it's a different field. So that's the human element of it. But you've probably also experienced that from the multi-channel or the omni-channel element of it, that, you know, I get an instant response to my email, but I DM them on their Facebook message page and I don't think anybody watches that. So it should always feel like you. The example the authors give is the banking industry. So the banking industry has actually done a really good job at making sure that whether you're on a phone app, on a desktop version, in a branch, or at an ATM, you can have a similar experience. We all know how quickly, if we go to a new bank, or I just actually moved a foundation that I work with to a new bank, and their business checking account doesn't have the ability to do a mobile deposit with a camera like my personal checking account does from the same company. That is a complete failure of a harmonistic integrated strategy. The second one is integration. So the authors use what I think is a really neat term, and they talk about the back of your house. So they say your back of house is showing. And what that means, and we've all probably experienced this, is that when we have internal processes, procedures, things like that, and all of a sudden the customer has to see that and deal with that in order to respond to us properly or to get the information they need, that's when your back of house is showing. If you've been in the restaurant industry, you know, kind of the back of the house is the kitchen, where it's a mess and chaos and 4-letter words being thrown around and everything else. And the front of the house is linen and silverware and clean glasses and politeness. So we have to make sure that our back of house isn't showing. I'll give you a perfect example. We are, as a company, DS Graphics Universal Wild, we're all about continuous improvement as well. And I read this book and I started to analyze our own business, and I said, man, we've got a lot of work to do. any of you that have done business with us know that we try to approach you with a lot of omni-channel ways to respond to us, even to these webinars and things like that. We use social media, direct mail, with augmented reality, all this other stuff. What I realized is that if you do a project with us, and the COVID-19 thing has kind of really made this even more apparent, some people would send us in checks. Well, for a while, our accounting department wasn't in all the time to get the checks. So we said, hey, can you guys wire transfer? Well, not everybody has the ability to wire transfer, and sometimes it causes fees. So our credit card process is that we have you fill out a form and then fax it to us, like 1992. And then we take that form and then we process the credit card. We do not have a way for you to pay us in an online environment using a credit card. So that's our back of house showing to you. We're going to fix it. But anyways, it's an example of what that means with integration. And the third one they talk about is end-to-end excellence. And the way they summarize this, I think, is great. And it's the difference between a policy and a philosophy. So take any policy you have and replace the word policy with philosophy and see how much it changes things. As an example, a customer return policy versus a customer return philosophy. A credit policy versus a credit philosophy, right? A misdelivery policy versus a misdelivery philosophy. A customer satisfaction policy versus philosophy. They talk about Disney. Disney doesn't have customer satisfaction policies. They have a customer satisfaction philosophy. LL Bean doesn't have a return policy. They have a return philosophy. So think about that as you look at your service organization and look at the things that you have as policies, change them to philosophy, empower your employees, and it'll be a much better experience for the customer. The big thing with omni-channel is action. So Karen Kaplan, she's the CEO of Hill Holiday, said advertising communications used to be about what people see. I know we've got some designers on this call, and that's kind of what you guys focus on. It's what people see: television, billboard, magazine, whatever it happens to be. Now you have to design ways for people to act on what they see in every single thing that you do, right? The whole kind of grassroots brand awareness thing is gone. Anything that you do, we need to give people the ability to act on what they see and then choose which channel they want to go down after they do. So that creates a challenge for us marketers. Somebody who's done this great is Warby Parker. I don't know if anybody's ever bought glasses from them, but these were 4 guys from the Wharton School decided to change the eyeglass industry. And they said, why don't we do it? And I think they used Netflix at the time as an example. With the old Netflix, they used to send you the DVDs. And basically their model was, you go online, you pick 5 frames, we send them to you, you try them on at home, you order them online, you send us the frames back. Online experience for glasses. Started working great. So great, in fact, and this was set up locally at first, that they ran out of inventory in their warehouse. But they had a bunch of frames at their apartment, so they said, well, if you want, you can come to our apartment and we'll give you the frames, and then you can go try them on and send them back, but still order them online. And that led to their store. So now they have stores, and guess what? You go in the store, you pick your frames, they bring them out, and there's an iMac, and you order them online. And then they had people that were at companies, local companies, and they said, geez, I can't really get to the store. It's kind of a pain in the neck. They bought a school bus, and they started to drive around. People would come out to the school bus, grab their pairs, go up to their office, try them on, bring the frames back, go back to their office, order them online. They were able to match this experience across all the different buying channels that they were offering their customers. They ended up with $1 billion valuation, by the way, a true unicorn. So pretty cool. So one of the things that we need to understand, and this is going to be part of your homework, is a concept that I call loyalty hurdles. And I didn't make this up. I had a friend who was very involved in the automotive industry and doing marketing for the automotive industry. And what he did was a tremendous amount of research to figure out at what points in the life cycle of someone buying an automobile from a dealership did they become most likely to return for a major repair service, purchase another car, or refer somebody else. Those are 3 big things in the automotive business that you want. So you want people who buy cars from you to come back to you if they have a major breakdown. You obviously want them to buy another car, but even better, you want them to refer their friends. So he started to do a lot of analysis on when people would come in and what types of activities they would do and how much more likely they would be to hit one of these major milestones. And he identified these loyalty hurdles. He said, you know, there's the initial purchase when they come in. If they do their first inspection with you, if they do their first oil change with you, their first maintenance service, second maintenance service, a repair service, and then a repeat purchase. Each one of these are steps, and some of them are more important than others. So through analysis, he determined what these loyalty hurdles are and where they had the biggest impact. As an example, if your goal was to get the customer to return for a major repair service, they only had a 3% chance of doing that if all they did was buy the car from you. And guess what? If they got it inspected, it was also 3%. It didn't really ingrain them into the dealer because most of the inspections were a state thing anyways. When they did their first oil change, it did increase pretty significantly, 15%. But when that first scheduled maintenance came up, if they came back to your dealership then, 65% chance that they were going to get any major repair done for you. Huge loyalty hurdle. Look at if your percentage that you'd purchase from the same dealership again, 5% for the person that just bought the car, 8% if you got the inspection, 12%, 13%. If you went back for your second scheduled maintenance service, suddenly you have an 80% chance that that customer is going to buy a car from you again. Big loyalty hurdle. You want a referral. Look, at the referrals are tougher to get, but if you get them to that repair service, then you have a much higher chance of them referring, almost 50%. And then if you get them to that repeat purchase, 80% of them are going to refer. So they all tie together, but the key is identifying what those loyalty hurdles are and which ones are the most important in your customer's life cycle. So that's my challenge to you. This is part of your homework. First of all, what is your ultimate goal? And you think of omni-channel, it's not response rates, it's what do you want the user to do? Do you want to get a referral? Do you want a repeat customer? Do you want to sell them additional services? Do you want higher value services, higher value donations, more sales or donations per month, per year, a specific new product line that you're doing? Whatever they are, determine what your ultimate goal is, not for the campaign, for the people in the campaign. And then what are the loyalty hurdles in that customer's life cycle to get them there? Try to find out what allows you to get to that high percentage to reach your goal. There's always one or two loyalty hurdles that are an exponential boost, and we've got to find out what those are. So loyalty hurdles, very important when it relates to omni-channel marketing. So now you've got your loyalty hurdles identified. You're starting to look at investment and integration. There's a number of things to be cautious of as it relates to the individual channels. And it's all about mix, right? And it's all about utilizing the channel that will have the best return at the best time and depending on where the customer is in their life cycle. It's integration of the technologies for timing, for scalability, measuring the ROI. It's doing that true A/B split when you want to try something new. I talk about this all the time, but if we had gone and on February 1st and decided to change our whole marketing campaign to omni-channel and use all these technologies, and we evaluated our results on June 1st, and we changed everything, the results probably stink, but it's not because of the switch to omni-channel, it's because of everything else that's happened in the world. However, if we did a randomized A/B split and half got the new way and half got the old way, we'd have some valuable insight, even though overall the results may have gone down. So true randomized A/B split is very important. And measurement and adjustment. It's important. This is all information that was culled out of the DMA response book, Direct Marketing Association. And they looked at different channels, promotional products, social media, text, phone, email, direct mail. And they looked at kind of the relationship that somebody had with a customer and what the average response rates were. So these are averages, which is, you know, the best of the worst, worst of the best, maybe different for your business, but it's interesting to look at because you can see that certain channels have a much higher or lower response depending on where that customer is in your relationship with them, from no knowledge of your brand at all to an active customer. So determining and knowing what these are for your business and your customers will help you to build the right type of omni-channel campaign and use the right channels at the right time and save money. We have a lot of people that are, you know, they look to do direct mail on kind of very, very cold leads. It's a fairly crappy investment for the most part, because if they have no knowledge of your brand, it's got a really low response rate versus, you know, previous relationships, previous customers, active customers, you can get really great response rates. So now you've kind of gotten through all of that. Now it's a time to figure out, okay, how do I actually automate this? Well, you have two options, right? You can purchase and integrate, if you already haven't, one of the major multi-channel automation hubs, or you can partner with an outside person to do it for you. So I'm going to kind of go through what you should be looking at if you're going to buy it your own, what you should be looking at if you're going to partner with somebody, and the advantages and disadvantages of each. So if you're going to purchase and integrate one of these systems, here's just a bulleted list of things that you need to be looking at in terms of how you want to evaluate the system. So I'm going to make this easy for you because in your handout is the Gartner Magic Quadrant study, and I'm going to go through that as well. But they do this for all the big players that are out there now. You don't have to write that down. It's in your handout and it's in the study. Here's the summary. So if any of you aren't familiar with Gartner, Gartner looks at a number of different industries and players in the industry, and they build what they call the Magic Quadrant. And what the Magic Quadrant is it divides all the players into 4 different categories: the challengers, the leaders, the niche players, and the visionaries. And their axes sometimes are different, but in this case, it's the strength of the vision versus the ability to execute. So pretty much the people that are put up in the top right are the market leaders. You can see the names in there: Salesforce, Marketo, Oracle, SAS, IBM. These are all very inexpensive systems. Salesforce isn't too bad, but the rest of them are pretty pricey. So one of the things to keep in mind is that these are multi-channel marketing hubs. There isn't an omni-channel marketing hub because omni-channel is about you. It's not about the technology. Omni-channel is about understanding your customer, understanding what we talked about with the loyalty hurdles, understanding the different impact that different channels will have on that journey, understanding your brand, understanding how people want to interact with you, so that if they call you, if you online chat, they DM you through your Twitter, through your Facebook, or through your LinkedIn, the response is the same. Does everybody in your service organization have the ability to respond to a DM on a LinkedIn from a customer? Probably not. You probably have your social media person running the LinkedIn account, and if something came that was specific to a customer need, they'd be like, huh? Send it to somebody else. And they'd respond to them with the channel that they wanted, not what the customer wanted. That's a breakdown in the service model. So anyways, take a look at the Gartner study if you're thinking about purchasing and integrating. I think you'll have some good insight there. If you're looking at purchasing and integrating, certainly there are some advantages and disadvantages. Advantages, you have full control, right? You own the system and you learn the system and you can control it any way you want. You can usually get things done quicker if you have the staff and resources to do it. You can get instant analysis on your testing versus maybe a delay sometimes if you're working with somebody else. It's easier to test things. You just put it in, test it, bang, see if it works, and you have more flexibility, right? You can kind of design your own. Disadvantages, I get that sometimes with our web storefronts. People say, well, can it work like Amazon? I said, well, you're kind of not paying very much per month and you're outsourcing it. So if you want to invest what Amazon invested in their website, we can get it to do anything you want. But there's an advantage to doing it on your own, and that's one of them. It can be like Amazon. Disadvantages, cost. A lot of these things have a big upfront sunk cost. You need internal resources to pull it off. If you're not doing it with an outside vendor, it means you need to integrate with an outside vendor, whether that's if you're doing your emails. Some of these have internal email systems, but certainly, print, social, things like that. There's a learning curve. And the other thing that's a big disadvantage, we believe, is that you lose the ability to take advantage of best practices across other industries. So if you're partnering with someone that does this and they have 15, 16, 25, 35, 100 customers that are doing omni-channel marketing, good partners will take ideas that other people are doing without violating kind of the confidentiality side of it and saying, hey, this is working for this other person, why don't you try it out? Where if you're doing it on your own, you're a bit in a vacuum, or you have to go to trade shows and user conferences. So if you're going to partner with a vendor, you're going to evaluate the same things. Plus, you want to make sure they have a good dashboard, because you're not going to have your own dashboard. You want to make sure they have a good detailed record view so that you can really analyze those individuals and see what their behavior is. Make sure they have experience. Make sure they have a range of platforms. One of the advantages of utilizing an outside vendor is they may have 3 or 4 different platforms that you can tie together. And what's their ability to integrate? Partnering is less sunk cost for sure, access to other platforms. The best practices transfer I talked about earlier, and resource allocation. You can kind of transfer those resources onto there. Disadvantages, certainly that ongoing cost is going to be higher because you don't own it, you're kind of renting it. Could be less flexible. All sanitizer in one bottle. See what I did there? Instead of eggs in a basket, all sanitizer in one bottle. Some companies are uncomfortable with that. And testing can become more difficult sometimes. This is just an example of, this is one of the systems that we utilize at DS Graphics Universal Wild, but this is the type of thing you should be looking at. This is a very easy to use system where you can just kind of drag and drop, build your campaign, build the rules, build the channels, and kind of just pick from all the different outbound and inbound channels that you want to use and build it up in a kind of a WYSIWYG type of format. You don't want to be coding and programming. You want to make something that's very easy so that you as a marketing professional can get in there, understand it, make changes, and see what the results were. So I promised you 5 easy implementations, and that's what I'm going to give you now. So these are 5 things that you can do, and they're not, they're not super complicated where we're taking 4 or 5 different channels and tying them all together. These are things that we want to show you how you can use Omni-channel. You can give the end user the ability to respond in the way they want to respond, keep the brand consistent, keep the timing consistent, and measure a campaign based on the user instead of the individual channels that you're utilizing. So we're going to take direct mail as kind of the first thing that we're going to tackle. And part of it is that direct mail is a horrible partner in almost any automated marketing hub. It does not play nice in the sandbox with everything else. First of all, there's no electronic tracking. It's not like an email, SMS, social media. You can't, on its own, track direct mail electronically. It's difficult to time. We're at the mercy of the USPS. We think we can estimate delivery dates, but like I tell people, if you're doing nonprofit or marketing mail and you're in New England, add 9 days to the first digit of the zip code. So if you're mailing to New England, could be up to 9 days. You're mailing to California, zip codes begin with 9, could be up to 18 days. I've seen marketing mail, standard mail, get from Boston to California in 3 days. So if you're trying to time, omni-channel strategies and spaced repetition, it's really difficult. It's also difficult to confirm delivery. Same thing, USPS. It's difficult to keep databases updated, right? We're always doing CAS and national change of address, and this is an apartment building and it's no longer valid. They're not accepting mail. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It's also difficult to integrate with other media because of its analog nature. So keep in mind, though, it's got the 3rd highest response rate of any any multi-channel marketing strategy, second only to phone and SMS text. So if we can figure out ways to utilize it in the right format, it can be extremely beneficial. And we know it makes a difference, right? We've seen all the time people say, well, we do direct mail and we do email, but we get much better response rate on our email. And then all of a sudden you take the direct mail piece away and the email response rates go down. Remember, people want to respond electronically, but they can be influenced through analog strategies. So don't underestimate the power of how these things are interacting with each other. So our first strategy, and some of you have heard me talk about informed delivery before. We have a whole webinar just on this coming up in a couple of months. And there's also a cheat sheet on your handouts that gives you all the details you need to know to do it. So if you're not signed up as a consumer for informed delivery, sign up today. Basically what happens is you will get an email every morning from the USPS, and it will give you a scan of everything that's coming into your mailbox. It's really cool. So you can see what's coming, but also if something's on there and it's not in your mailbox, maybe the looters got it. But you're missing something, right? So the people that get these, there's an over 70% open rate because it's coming from the USPS. It's not coming from you. So they trust it. And once people start using it, they look forward to it every day. What we can do as marketers, so your pieces right now that are going to the mail, if you're in a B2C, people are already getting black and white scans of what you're sending them. As marketers, we can enhance what that email looks like by doing 2 things: adding what's called a representative image, which is a replacement to the black and white scan, and adding a ride-along image, which actually is where the Omni-channel comes in. That allows people to tap on the image and launch into a website, a personalized URL, a landing page, whatever it happens to be that you're trying to drive them to. And you can do this for zero increased costs. Some people have done it with just the ride-along image. So you leave the black and white scan. I've got some interesting stats I'm going to share with you about that, and just put the offer down below. And then some people do both. So here's the thing about informed delivery. Everybody loves it that uses it. If you're friends of mine, everybody I meet, I say, oh, you got to sign up for this. It's great. So 93%, I don't know who the 7% are, but most people would recommend it. The other thing is it's hitting mobile, it's hitting computer or laptop, or in terms of how people are looking at this, a little bit of tablet. But look at the time of data view. As I said, this email comes in the morning. 81% of people are viewing it in the morning. So that's huge. Very high response rate, multiple impressions, spaced repetition. It is guaranteed to get there the same day as your direct mail piece. There is no other way you can do that, right? Even, I'm going to talk about another strategy for businesses, but even with that, we can't guarantee that it's going to be the same day. This guarantees you're going to get 2 hits that same day with the same brand and multiple ways to respond, guaranteed. And great data. We can show you who opened it, the tracking. We can actually take your list and run it through our system, and we can tell you what percentage of the people are signed up for it. I've already talked about the 70% open rate and the tracking, and it's very low cost. You got to create the images, but look at the open rates. This is just some sample companies that we did a mailing to employees at the company, and you can see the open rates went from 70% to 82%. Click-through rates, so basically clicking on to enroll in this program, anywhere from 4 to 8%. These are very, very, very good conversion rates. The click-through rate on the ride-along image only, which again, the ride-along is just the tag and the link to the website, versus the ride-along and the representative image, are pretty close now. When we first started this, the people that put the ride-along and the representative image, it had about a half a click-through rate as the other one. And the thing I think is why is because it looked like an ad. All of a sudden, people were getting this black and white, black and white, black and white, and then next time they get this color piece, and it kind of freaked them out. But it's getting closer, but still a 6% click-through rate is pretty good. So if you're not in the B2C and you want to use something similar and trigger even more channels, you can use Track My Mail. Now this does cost a little bit more. It's a 2 to 3% increase in postage costs. But basically what this does is it scans the pieces through the USPS, and you can build triggers, not only reporting, but you can build triggers so that when it hits the rural route, which is the delivery person, you can have that trigger whatever that next hit is that you want, whether it's an email, a social media post, an SMS text, if you have that relationship with the record, whatever it happens to be. And you don't have to worry about trying to space out email follow-ups across the country if you're doing standard mail and you're mailing on a national basis, because you can just build the system, let it go, and it'll send out whatever you're looking to send out, the social, the SMS, the email, as people receive it. So really cool way, very easy way, very inexpensive way. To 2 to 3% on postage is not that bad. If you use one of the USPS promotional campaigns, they usually give you a savings 2% on postage. We can show you how to do that. So here's how it can work. We did a mailing during the pandemic when everybody's working from home. We sent them 10 postcards they could mail out to their friends. You use a Track My Mail trigger, and that triggered our social media post on our 2 social media accounts. So we know the day people were getting it, and we're all local for this, is the day they're going to see the social media posts. The other one is direct mail with video. So video has certainly become one of the most popular ways people are viewing content right now. And some of you have heard me talk about augmented reality before. Augmented reality links a digital experience with print. And one of the biggest disadvantages is that you needed to download an app. I have good news for you. You don't need an app anymore. Augmented reality can now work with just your web browser. And you could do just regular standard augmented reality, which is what you're seeing here, where it picks up on a marker and plays a video or some other content as you move the piece around. You can go to more of an enhanced augmented reality, where the piece turns into a 3-dimensional kind of a visualization. This is obviously looking through your phone. Doesn't happen in real life yet, but really good details. That button on the bottom is also part of the augmented reality. You can see it's not printed on the piece as I move it around. If I tap it on my phone, in this case, it brings me to a webinar registration site. So again, we're giving a couple of different strategies. And then there's mixed mode augmented reality, which is where you actually put a 3-dimensional world inside the user. And this is my home office with a bunch of little critters running around it. And again, you can create interactivity. This has got a little sign by the fox that you'll see coming up. And when you tap on the sign to join us, it again goes to a registration page. So augmented reality, again, the biggest challenge was people would have to download these apps to use it. You don't have to anymore. And I'm going to show you how you can get people to interact with your direct mail pieces without the app. But look at all the ways this is being used now. So this is Lufthansa. Oh, this isn't. This is how to build an Aperol Spritz. So this is a marker on their bottle, and it kind of takes place in your real world and shows you how to mix the perfect drink. This is at a zoo where if you hold your phone over, it gives you more content. The one on the left is the USPS created a little game on how to deliver things, showing how web-based augmented reality works. Lufthansa has it on their seats on some of their flights, so it can show you how to use the controls. It shows you your lack of leg room, a little cycle over here, and then the recipe book on the Heinz ketchup thing. So how do you actually get these things to work without downloading an app? Well, with an app, you can launch these via what we call a marker, which is we take an image, we register it, and when you download the app looks at the image, it recognizes it, and it does whatever we've told it to do. Play a video, have buttons pop up, whatever it happens to be. In web-based AR, where you don't need an app, all you have to do is use a QR code. And QR codes are great now. I hated them before. They're great now because all the phones, the cameras, you don't need to download an app. You just hold your phone over the QR code and it will do what you said it's going to do. You can also use near field communication. So if any of you attended our webinar on emerging advanced technology, we sent out a postcard. It had a little near field communication sticker on it. It's like an RFID. And if you had an Android or an iPhone 11, all you had to do was hold your phone close to the piece and it would launch into that augmented reality. You can also launch it via email. You send an email to somebody's mobile phone and they click on it and it opens a web browser and creates this whole environment around them marketing your product or service, and it gives you the ability to let them learn more, sign up for things, whatever. You can launch it versus SMS text. So if you have text messaging set up right now, you can launch the text, they click on the link, bang, they're in an augmented reality experience. Unbelievable reporting, very good demographics. You can see exactly where people are hitting your augmented reality and results. How about number 4, direct mail to SMS text? The biggest advantage of text messaging, other than a 28% response rate, if you have that relationship, is the time of response. If you can see by this chart, we had on average, we have 80% of people respond to an interactive text. It's not just, hey, your appointment's tomorrow, but are you interested in this? Type back to me, kind of build a whole campaign around it. 80% within 2 hours or 3 hours responded to the text. That's a great response rate, and it's a very short response rate. How do you do it with direct mail? Easy. QR codes, they work again. Don't be afraid of them. I scan over the QR code, it hits, do you want to compose a message? Bang, right to my text, compose a message. It's that easy, and it's that inexpensive. Number 5, phone. So phone is the #1 way to develop responses, but now people don't answer unknown numbers. So there's a new feature in one of our marketing automation platforms that they offer called ringless voice messaging. What this does is it will leave a message on someone's cell phone without ringing the cell phone. That creates a sense of intrigue, very high response rate in terms of listening to it. It's only 8 cents per message, so it's pretty inexpensive. So you can also do this on office phones and things like that. So it's a really good way to create that kind of sense of intrigue. And you're able to integrate a phone channel into the system. So I told you you'd have some homework, right? This is in your handout. What is your omni-channel action plan? If you haven't done this before, start slow, right? But let's find out, where's the back of your house showing? I gave you our embarrassing example. I'm sure you've all thought of some things from your own company. We all have them, no matter how good we are. So find out what that is, get it fixed. Second, what are the loyalty hurdles in your business? So what are the stages of your customer's life cycle where they become exponentially more valuable and their customer interaction increases? Actually, IDC released in 2017 that omni-channel customers that interact with you in all these different ways, have a 30% higher lifetime value than those who don't. So building the ability to allow them to do that will be profitable for your organization. Third, are you going to invest in this kind of stuff, or are you going to outsource it? Fourth, what channels are your strongest now, and how can you build on them? Let's not recreate the wheel. If you've got great social media traction, you're trending, you have good followers, good interaction, start with that and figure out how you can build on that with other channels. And then also, finally, does your service organization work in harmony with your marketing organization? Like woo, wow, win, right? Let's create that experience so that we can make sure that we're aligned. All right, we're at 44 minutes. I left a minute for questioning. So I'm gonna go see if we have any questions. I didn't see any as we were going through, so either you weren't paying attention or I did a decent job explaining. Yeah, no questions. I love it. Okay, so if you have any questions and you're just too embarrassed to have me answer them on the call, email them to me. You'll get a follow-up email. So you'll get a follow-up email with a survey. It's 3 questions, very easy. Also, when you shut down this webinar, there's a chance that the survey pops up. It doesn't work on every browser. That's why I also included it in the email. Additionally, here's all the contact information. We've got, I think, 10 recorded webinars on our webinar channel. That is in your handout as well. So if you're interested in any of these other things, feel free to go on there and watch them. Other than that, I wish you all a wonderful day. It was great spending some time with you. Happy lunch, and I'll get your Grubhub gift codes off to you as soon as you get that survey back to me. All right, thanks everybody.